James, an interesting point is about Ethereum staking. Do you believe that after the Ethereum ETF is already being traded, we could see the approval of Ethereum staking in protocols like Lido Finance?
Um, so part of the reason why I think so if you look at Bitcoin and Ethereum, Ethereum's about a third the size of Bitcoin right now. Part of the reason I said I thought they would do 20% is there's a discount to the fact that, one, you lose a little more utility putting Ethereum in an ETF wrapper than you do putting Bitcoin in an ETF wrapper. There's more utility you get from using Bitcoin to do different things, at least right now. But the main reason is that you don't have staking. So anyone who can invest in Ethereum and use a staking protocol, it would be relatively stupid for you to buy an ETF. Basically, you can earn 3+% yield in a staking protocol, or you can pay 20 basis points, possibly more, to hold it in a brokerage account. So theoretically, the people that are investing in these ETFs will be people that like can't access Ethereum directly, or they're just like restricted, or they have money in a specific account that can only invest in TradFi. So that's why you would hold these things. That's part of the reason why we're discounting them. I think ultimately these ETFs will be allowed to stake. We have ETFs in Canada that stake. We have ETFs in Europe that stake for Ethereum. The SEC, as I said, under this administration, is just not comfortable with staking. They view it potentially as making Ethereum or securitized. I think the SEC, specifically Gary Gensler, thinks staked ETH itself might be a security. That's my personal view. So I think right now it's not going to happen, but down the line at some point, these ETFs will be allowed to stake. But the way that ETF stake is like, if there's 100 million in assets in these ETFs, they're not staking $100 million of Ethereum. They're staking like $30 to $40 million to get that bump in yield. But they need to be able to be liquid, because you can't get out of the staking protocol in like a couple hours or a day the way you would, or less than 12 hours really, the way you would for an ETF. Like if people want to take their money out of the ETF, you have to be able to hand them money or hand them the underlying asset. So there's a lot of like issues that are also just beyond the fact that the SEC is concerned with staking. There's liquidity concerns about exactly how that would work. But yeah, I mean, I think Hester Peirce was on Coinage Media, which is another podcast, recently saying that she thinks at some point staking will be allowed. I'll say if Biden wins in November and Gensler is still at the SEC, or even the Dems still control the SEC, I will not be holding my breath for staking be allowed in these ETFs.
And what are the odds of Trump's and being not so pro crypto? I think it's a risk question. If you want to answer that, I will be happy to listen. I think it's more politician, but what are the odds of, in the end? So Trump just needed the money for the campaign. Now he doesn't care so much about crypto.
Yeah, I mean, so this is my personal view. I'm not a political analyst. Like the way I look at it is the worst case scenario from my point of view. I don't think he will, no matter what, he's not going to be as bad as Elizabeth Warren and the left-wing Dems that control the SEC right now have been. So the worst case scenario is that he's just like not antagonistic and is just kind of neutral on the topic, which is a win for the crypto industry as far as I'm concerned. Now, the Biden admin and the Dems seem to be coming around and realizing that they've screwed up in the way they've handled this. They've been anti-innovation. They've been anti plenty of other things. So I think that's the main risk. I mean, also politics, it's often quid pro quo, right? Like it's often like you give and you take, and he's coming to speak at Bitcoin Nashville next week. You don't do that and then just like completely turn around and like go back to attacking the industry. So people saying like under his first admin, he was relatively negative cryptocurrency. His Treasury Secretary, Steve Mnuchin, was relatively negative and anti-cryptocurrency. I don't think they go back to that. Like, I don't think that's going to happen. I think they're at the worst case scenario, they could be neutral, but they're promising a lot of positive things. Like it's on the actual Republican, checklist of things that they want to do. There's a whole section on cryptocurrency and what they want to do. So I don't think they're going to go back and do the opposite of that. Will they do everything on that list? Maybe, probably not. It's talking points. They're trying to get votes. So I think it's pretty standard political movements here within the US. On the flip side, I personally wish that this hadn't become so politically divided and bipartisan and diversive. I wish that this had stayed a little more bipartisan. It seems to still be. There's plenty of Dems that are pro digital assets in this space, but this is definitely something the Republicans have taken up at the end. It's I just think it shouldn't be that divisive. I think there's a lot of positive things from what digital assets and crypto are trying to do, but this is the state we live in, or the country we live in, I guess I should say. So it kind of is what it is.
In the question we already asked, but in a different way, about the potential of the Bitcoin ETFs. We just now have been seeing reports of Bernstein and other big institutionals saying that finally big banks could distribute the BlackRock ETFs and etc. For their clients. So, do you think that we will make such a difference, or we already have seen the flow that was coming to these ETFs? It's not a few. It's not little. It's a huge flow. But do you think it's going to be more with these movements?
Yeah, so those big banks control trillions of dollars. Those are advisors or wealth managers. Think Morgan Stanley, Merrill Lynch, UBS, like these massive banks with tons of assets. The most of the money that has come in has been so far for those Bitcoin ETFs has been retail. Some institutions, a lot of hedge funds are trading this, probably doing the basis trade against the futures market, which we can get into if you want. But there's a lot of there hasn't been a ton of those massive wealth platforms from those like big banks I just mentioned that hold this yet. And that's because usually like a lot of people think these ETFs get approved and all of a sudden everyone can buy them. But these advisors are on this platform, and like the way it usually works is ETFs kind of have like there's like three tiers. The first tier is like absolutely no one can buy this, which Bitcoin ETFs started out. A lot of ETFs will start out there. The middle tier is like, okay, you can buy this for your client, but only if they ask for it, or only if you jump through all these hoops explaining why you're buying it, fill all this paperwork and do all this extra stuff. And then the third tier is like, okay, you can buy it by just clicking on it on our platform. You can add it to your client's portfolio. And also in that third tier, you get to an additional level where like you can kind of like you are actually able to pitch it to your clients. So rather than me as a client going to my advisor and saying like, I want to hold some Bitcoin, get me an ETF, then you do that. At some point, likely in the third quarter, likely by sometime in the fourth quarter, I'm hearing third to fourth quarter, those advisors, those wealth platforms, those brokers will be able to go out. Like the advisor would be able to come to me and be like, I think you should have 1% of your assets in Bitcoin. And that undoubtedly will unlock a lot of flow into Bitcoin ETFs. So I think if you look 12 months out or 6+ months out from here, I think there will be a pickup in flows. Honestly, we've seen a pickup in flows over the last couple of weeks as Bitcoin tanked into the mid 50,000s. It's now back into the mid 60s, but there's been money coming in. I think we will see another wave of flows coming from those types of advisors. But there's no way to know exactly how much that is. I mean, there's a lot of money there. Even if like I don't know, 10 to 20% of those advisors put like 1% of their clients' assets into this account, that can add up to be tens of billions of dollars. So we'll see. I guess it's no matter how you slice it, it's neutral to positive. Even if no one actually buys it, it's neutral. But at the it could be extremely positive once those platforms get the okay to recommend those things to those clients.
Given the current scenario in United States with the upcoming elections and the potential interest rate cuts, could this be major catalyst for Bitcoin?
I mean, the election definitely, I think, could be a major catalyst. Rate cuts, maybe. I mean, we know that crypto and Bitcoin specifically, like one of the things it's most correlated to is global liquidity. So you kind of seeing what happens with quantitative easing and quantitative tightening might be a little more impactful. But yeah, I mean, I'd be crazy to say cutting rates isn't a positive for Bitcoin, but like we're looking at maybe 25 basis points in September. Some people think we could get a cut in July. I personally don't. I think we'll see a 25 basis point cut in September right now, and then maybe one or two more before the end of the year. And then who knows what happens into 2025. I mean, Trump is famous for wanting lower rates. So I think I think it's net positive for Bitcoin. And like I said, I do think a Trump election would be net positive for the entire digital asset space with how much he's working and talking with the industry right now. He's got the ear, or a lot of people in the industry have his ear right now, it seems. I mean, I said it already, but he's coming to headline the largest Bitcoin conference in the world in Nashville next week. If he wins, that could definitely be a catalyst. And obviously lower interest rates are net positive for Bitcoin. But again, it depends more what happens more longer term. I don't necessarily think a 25 basis points rate cut from where we're at 5.5 or something like that, 5.75 down to 25 basis points is going to like, oh my God, send Bitcoin to the moon. But if we get to 3 years from now and there's continue cuts left and right, that might make sense. It could be net positive, but I'm not a macroeconomist. I kind of pretend to be one sometimes on Twitter.
I was thinking about the other ETFs, right? Okay, the USA is the largest economy in the world, but we already saw others Bitcoin ETFs approval, like in Australia and in Canada was already approved. But how do you see these ones? Do you think it can be a factor, up factor in the Bitcoin price? It can cause a valorization on Bitcoin with the inflows, or the inflows aren't this massive?
Which are you about the inflows that we're like the inflows to the Bitcoin ETFs? I mean, if you
The,
look
the
at
sorry, the not in the USA, in the other countries like Australia. I
Gotcha.
saw
Okay.
you talked about the Australia's
Yeah.
ones on your Twitter and etc.
Yeah. So Europe is the bigger market as far as products go. Asia actually has some now. Hong Kong has them. Australia has them. Obviously, Brazil has plenty of ETFs. They've been way more productive and forward-looking than the US has been. Same with Canada. The problem is, if you look at the US market, it's the largest capital markets in the world. Specifically, if you look at just ETFs, like if you're just looking at the ETF market, we're like 70+%, 80% of the assets almost, and over 80% of the trading volume. So we actually, like in the US, export trading volume. Like if you look at the ETFs that held crypto around the world, I've written about this. They almost every country that had these ETFs saw outflows right after the US Bitcoin ETFs launched. So that's a cause of two things. One, people like the US markets. So if you're an institution and you can invest in the US markets, even if you're a national, you're probably going to lean that way, particularly because of how cheap the US Bitcoin ETFs are. And also you throw onto the top that like the liquidity that we have here is so much deeper, so much more trading. It's like not even comparable. It's a whole different universe compared to the trading volume of these products elsewhere in the world. So if you're an institution, it's way more liquid. It's as cheap, if not cheaper than any other product in the world. So like for the most part, the US is always, at least in recent time, and in my view going forward, the US is going to be the leader in the space and have the largest impact. That is not to say that other parts of the world would not have an impact. I think Hong Kong could be a huge, massive hub, particularly if some of those ETFs open up to mainland Chinese investors. Right now, you can only invest in those ETFs if you're in Hong Kong. There's a lot of rumors about China opening up a little bit again for crypto. I think that could be a massive hub. So who knows? Maybe not anytime soon. Maybe 2025, theoretically, something like that could open up. But for now, it's small potatoes compared to the US. And even when it does open up, to be clear, it still won't be anywhere near the level of the US markets. but it could certainly be impactful enough on Bitcoin and other digital assets themselves.
So thank you. I think that was the last question. I know you are a busy man, so thank you for your time, James, and thank you for coming here in our podcast. Thank you, Vinicius, for co-hosting with me. If you have another one last thing to add, feel free.
No, James, excellent interview. Thank you very much, and Bitcoin to the moon.
Wonderful to meet you, Vinicius, and good to see you again, Leonardo.
It's always good to see you. Thank you very much.
Very much.
Just going
Have a good one, guys.
Se você quiser aprender mais sobre esse tipo de conteúdo, entender mais como o Bitcoin funciona no seu mercado spot, mercado futuro, como é que a negociação de Bitcoin funciona de modo mais técnico, você pode conhecer os nossos cursos, os nossos materiais educacionais lá no BlockTrends Pro. Lá tem bastante conteúdo e bastante material para você entender mais especificidades do mercado do Bitcoin e de ativos digitais, além de, obviamente, ter diversos conteúdos sobre investimento, trade e análise de mercado, tá?